Hi, welcome. It's Cara. My kitten is sitting on my notebook that has all the info I need for this video, and welcome to my wrap up. This month was the NEWTs, and to be honest, other than using the prompts to pick out my TBR, I honestly hardly participated this round, which is a shame, but I got really busy. Jessie was in the hospital for a little bit, which was a bit tough. I had my family visiting. I had a bunch of gigs and events I was going to. It was just really busy, and then I got a bit slumpy. So between those things, I really did not get as much read as I'd aimed for. I did complete the challenges required for my career, which was healer, which is good progress, but I was hoping to read a lot more than I did. I just kind of fell off the bandwagon in August, and I hardly engaged on Twitter, hardly even remembered to fill in the tracker. I think I forgot half the books on the tracker, and it was a bit of a mess. But I'm going to talk to you about what I read today, what I thought of them. I also totally gave up on my Twitter thread. I gave up on Goodreads reviews. So these reviews are going to be, I guess, kind of rough, and my ratings, I think, take with a grain of salt. I've stopped rating on Goodreads this month because I didn't want to give a rating without having written a full review, but then I also kind of felt it freeing not giving a rating. So I'll give vague ratings today, but they're kind of more gut feeling ratings rather than calculated out based on my thoughts in different areas. So I guess we'll just see how it goes. So these are not in the order I read them, they're in the order of how I have written them down for the NEWTs. So the first thing I got was an A in arithmancy, and that's a book that ends on an even page number, and for that I read These Witches Don't Burn, which was actually the final thing I read in the month, and it took me a whole week to read because I was slumpy, but I enjoyed it. I think gut feeling is it's a 4-star. This follows our main character's Hannah, who is here, her ex-girlfriend Veronica, is that, yes, Veronica, her best friend Gemma, and her new crush Morgan. And Hannah is a teen witch, and she's an elemental witch. Her coven, including Veronica, are all elemental witches. There's kind of 3 types of witches: elementals, casters, and blood witches. But they kind of don't mesh well and don't get along, and we know that in the past there was a thing that happened with Veronica and Hannah that involved a blood witch, and Hannah really feared for her life and Veronica wasn't really there for her, and that's what caused them to break up. But now things are going weird, and she thinks that this blood witch might have come back to try and get her. And it's a mystery thriller, like contemporary thriller though. This really reads like a cheesy teen movie, and I think it was exactly what I needed at the right time. I just really enjoyed it. The romance is cute and female. This was my LGBTQ+ reads Patreon pick for the first month that I did it, which was July. And yeah, the romance was really cute, and it wasn't super predictable, which I liked. Like, I didn't see the twist super coming, and it was easy to read, which is exactly what I needed in a slump. Then I got an E in astronomy, and so that meant I read the A book and the E book. So A was a book with a moon on the cover, and E was a book with night in the title or series name. So I read Nevernight and God's Grave for these 2 challenges. I listened to them on audiobook. They were a reread. They were both rereads. My physical copies are at my mum's house because I'm trying to make her read them. And so I didn't have them on hand, but I did listen to the audiobooks. I wasn't maybe the biggest fan of the audiobooks. I think the narrator, he's really good at pacing and kind of like getting the feeling of things, but he pronounces some things weird, and it's obviously male and our main character's female. But I guess the narrator is male, so it's a bit funny. Like the narrator of the books, not the narrator of the audiobook, if that makes sense, as male. But I obviously love these stories. I understand they've got some problems, but I also just get so absorbed in the plot and the characters that I find myself having to forgive those, though I can definitely understand if you can't. And I know these books aren't for everyone, but I personally really enjoyed them, and I gave both 5 stars on reread. I guess like gut feeling 5 stars. I just love them a lot, and I'm very glad I reread them because I also read Dark Door later in the month, and I'm glad I had the refresher. The next subject that I worked on was Charms. I got an E, so I read 2 books for that. For my A, it's a book with a gorgeous cover, and I read Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This is a YA fantasy following Elizabeth, who is an apprentice librarian for these fancy big libraries that hold grimoires, which are books that kind of have personalities, I guess, and can turn evil. And librarians really don't get along well with sorcerers who kind of make the grimoires. They're kind of at odds with each other, and they both think each other are not very nice. Like, there's a bit of stigma associated there. And she gets caught up with the sorcerer after being kind of accused of setting off one of these grimoires into something evil. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was fun and a really fast ride. Like, I flew through this. It was so fun. This was before my slump kicked in. I just had a great time. The romance was fun. There were some really poignant moments that dramatic, but like were fun and like pulled at my heartstrings. This is definitely on the touch dramatic side, but I loved it. It was so good. This was a 5 stars. Then for the E in Charms, it was something that is a comic, graphic novel, manga, or book under 150 pages, I think it was. And I read Memento, the Illuminae Files novella by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. And I read this with April over at Aprilius Maximus. I read it out loud to her on FaceTime. I actually really enjoyed this, though I think if I had have paid money for it, I would not have liked it. It's really not much. And I won it in a giveaway that Dimmicks ran. But a lot of people paid a lot of money to buy fancy editions to get this, and I don't think it was worth a lot of money. I thought it was cute and fun, and especially seeing as we read it together, April and I were like laughing and joking about it as we went, which improved the experience, I think. And so I gave it like a 3.75 4 stars. It was really good for a novella. Then for Defense Against the Dark Arts, which is my next subject, I got an E. And the first for the A was a book that's Black Under the Dust Jacket, which I read Romanov for by Nadine Brandes. This is obviously an Anastasia retelling, and it's kind of like a magical Anastasia retelling. I give this a 3 stars, I think. My main problems were that it was really slow. Not a lot happened for a lot of this. It definitely had pacing issues. And I didn't even really feel like our main character was very Anastasia-y. She didn't have a strong personality. It was more about the people around her. I didn't really feel like I understood her, even though we were first person perspective. And it was just alright. Like, I didn't really have major problems with it, but it also didn't really do anything major for me. It was very meh. So that's why I give it 3 stars. It was fine. It's probably more like a 2.5. Like, it's fine, but it was nothing special. I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend it to anyone. The magic wasn't super well explained. It's a bit murky. The plot definitely has some pacing issues, and the characters were just a bit flat. So 2.5, 3 stars. And then for the E in Defense Against the Dark Arts was the first book that came to mind while you were watching the prompts. And for this, I read Middle Game by Shauna Maguire, which is probably my favorite book of the month. I gave this a 5 stars. It's a chunky boy. Again, I was reading this kind of right at the end, right at the start of when my reading slump was kicking in. This was probably the end of the slump. I wouldn't say it put me into the slump, but I was reading it right as the slump was kicking in because I was busy. I absolutely adored this. We follow Roger and Dodger, who are twins that are kind of designed to, that they're not born, they're created as a like philosophical alchemical experiment. and it follows them throughout their entire life. There's some time warpy kind of components, quantum entanglement. It's really, really good. Shauna Maguire is an amazing writer. None of her Mira Grant stuff really speaks to me, but the Wayward Children series is absolute fave. This is absolute fave. More things like this, please. I would eat these up. It was just so good. I 100% recommend it. This cover is so morbid. I love it. And I can't wait to like push this on people because it was so good. Then I got an E in Herbology. So for my A in Herbology, I read an audiobook, and that was Girls on the Verge by Sharon Biggs Waller. This is a hard-hitting contemporary following a girl who's trying to get an abortion in Texas, where it's complicated as F. I think I should have loved this, but it ended up being more like a 3.5 star, and I think that was in a large part because I read it on audiobook. The narrator for me really struggled with some pacing issues that was more in the narration than the story, especially around the ends of chapters. The way she just like spoke ends of chapters kind of ruined the gravity of moments for me. And that was a major component as to why I wasn't a huge fan of this. I thought it was very important. It's a really, like, a story people should be reading. But the actual writing for me kind of let it down a little bit. But, so it's like a 3.5 stars. I would recommend it. It's pretty good. Maybe don't try the audiobook because it didn't work for me. And then for the E in Herbology, it was a book between 350 and 390 pages, and for that I read The Wise and the Wicked by Rebecca Purtis. This is another favorite of the month. I would give this a 4.5 stars. It was just really good. We follow Ruby, who is a Chernyavsky. It's overall this is mostly about Russian folklore. Her family, Ruby's family, all can predict, like they have a moment in their teens where they see a vision of themselves as they are shortly before they die. And so they write it down in this book. And then when someone dies, the head of the family reads out what their prediction was. So we get to see that kind of play out. And she sees herself dying very young, and so she kind of wants to change that, and she doesn't think it's possible, and she's kind of resigned herself to the fact. But then the matriarch of the family dies, and her prediction doesn't match what actually happens. So suddenly everything gets kind of thrown out of whack, and it's kind of the family story. It's a very slice of life for these people, this family. The love interest is a trans boy. And it's really just an exploration of culture and heritage, especially the Russian culture, but also what it means to be family, mortality, that kind of stuff. It was really sweet. I really loved it. I love this kind of speculative, just a hint of fantasy kind of stuff. It was so good. Then I got an E in History of Magic, and for an A in that, I had to read a fantasy, and for that I reread The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and I read this with April as a buddy read. This is obviously a reread for me. I love The Night Circus, but this was my first time ever rereading it. And I was a little scared going in that I wouldn't like it as much as I did the first time. But honestly, for me, the atmosphere still just shines through. This doesn't have a strong plot. It's really a character-driven, atmospheric-driven story. But I love it, and I'm so excited for the Starless Sea like you would not believe. This follows, if you didn't know, Celia and Marco, and Celia and Marco are both kind of like pushed, kind of like bonded into this game that they have to play, that they don't really understand the game or the stakes involved, and neither do you for a large portion of the book, which I think is what lends to its lack of a solid plot. But really it focuses around this circus that they kind of run this game in, and the atmosphere of the circus, and it's honestly just so amazing. I love it so much. 5 stars on reread. Then for the E in History of Magic, it was a book including a map, and for this I last minute added Dark Dawn by J. Kristoff. Obviously, because it came out and I had to read it immediately, even though I was slumpy. This book kind of defied my slump. I was slumpy for everything else, but Dark Dawn kind of like went, never mind, I'm here, I'm going to be read. And then as soon as I was done with it, I was back full into slump. This obviously does have a map in the front. Yes, this is the final book in the Nevernight Chronicles that follows Mia Corvette, who is like 16, and when she was 10 she witnessed her father being hanged for something she believed he really wasn't responsible for, and she's out to seek revenge. Love a good revenge story. Love assassins that actually do killing. Love that. This is gritty, gory, bloodthirsty, lots of blood, lots of action, and it was a great conclusion. I'm gonna give it like a 4.95 stars. It's probably a 5 stars, just because I love the world and the characters and the story, and but the ending, I think maybe I'll be the odd one out. It was like good, but I think it was almost a cop-out. I said it. Like, I loved it in my soul, but I also think the story spent so much time being so one way that it felt like a little bit like a sudden change in angle right at the end. Bit of a cop-out, but I still really enjoyed it. And if you like this series, definitely keep going with it, because Dark Dawn doesn't really disappoint, except for maybe at the end. No, it's not even disappointing. It's just a little bit like, okay. Then I got my E in Potions. So for an A in Potions, I had to read a friend's favorite book. And for that, I read I Wish You All the Best by Mason Diva, which was recommended to me by April. She picked it out from my stack. This follows a non-binary person named Ben, who has just come out to their parents and gets kicked out of home, and they move to live in with this. They move cities to move in with their sister, and go to a new school where they meet Nathan, who's obviously a black bisexual boy, though I think he's probably maybe kind of in the closet or not self-aware at the start of the novel. And really it's an exploration of what it means to be non-binary, what it means to deal with that in a family setting, and also how to deal with romance, anxiety, depression. It's very hard-hitting, pretty short. I really loved it in one sense, but I think the writing was maybe not my favorite, but I'm not a huge contemporary reader for that reason. A lot of things don't super impress me in the writing in contemporary. This reminded me, like, if you like the plot of this and kind of the character dynamics between Ben and Nathan, I think you would really like Go Your Own Way by Zane Riley, which follows, I'm pretty sure Zane's non-binary, but the characters aren't, or at least not in the first two which I've read. But you follow Lennox and what's the other character's name? It's a male-male romance, and you follow the two boys. It's a interracial couple, but it's a very bad boy romance, but like bad boy on the outside, soft boy on the inside, and the kind of like the dynamics between Ben and Nathan remind me of that book's relationship dynamics when they're not in the public setting, where Lennox is putting in his bad boy attitude, if that makes sense. So if you really ship Ben and Nathan and want that kind of dynamic, definitely check out Zane Riley's Go Your Own Way series, because I really feel like it's got a very similar relationship dynamic, which I really enjoy. And then for my E in Potions, it was a cover in your Hogwarts house color. I'm obviously a Hufflepuff, so it was something yellow, and I read Dillion Dreams by Lilian Rivera, which is pretty yellow. I ended up really not liking this as much as I would have hoped, especially considering the gorgeous cover. It was like a 3 stars kind of. The world was really interesting to me. It's set in a Mexicans or Latinx inspired, I won't say exactly where because I'm not 100% sure, inspired fantasy world, post-apocalyptic kind of world. It's very Mad Maxy. And that bit was really cool. There's a lot of gang violence and kind of things, and it's all girl gangs, and men are like bottom of the social hierarchy. and we are reading from the point of view of the leader of one of these gangs, Rocker, I think. Her name's Nala, but that's not what they call her. And she's the leader of Las Malcriadas. Yes. And this little girl gang kind of go on an adventure to reveal a lot of the world. I think what I really struggled in this was the writing style. It's very, I think actually it's a very me thing, not a book thing. I think it just was not for me. It was pretty choppy and slangy, but that would have been fine, except it somehow failed. Like, I think that limited its ability to make the hard-hitting moments feel hard-hitting. Like, afterwards I'd be like, oh, that was kind of important and should have been a really heavy moment, but I didn't feel it as heavy because of the way the writing kind of flowed. And so that really limited this for me, because I didn't feel the emotional highs and lows that I should have. But that's probably a me thing, so don't let that hold you from reading this if you like the idea of it, because I think it could definitely be people's kind of favorite things. And I guess there's like a hint, it's very, maybe a hint at a female romance, but it's very like feminist theme heavy. Then my final subject that I read anything for was Transfiguration, and for an A in Transfiguration I read Girls of Paper and Fire, which is queer rep of some description. This is by Natasha Nyan. Everyone's heard of this, I feel like. This has a female romance, and it's a Chinese inspired fantasy. I think Chinese, maybe something else in there, I don't know. Asian inspired fantasy. I feel like it's Chinese, but maybe I'm wrong. And there's 3 castes, like demons, like animal demons, half demons, and humans, and obviously the demons are on top and the humans are down the bottom. And our main character, Lei, gets taken. She's a human girl, and she gets taken to be a concubine to the demon king. And it's a female romance between her and another concubine. It's pretty, has a lot of themes of like sexual assault, rape, empowerment. For me though, I think I expected it to be darker somehow. Like, everyone was saying it was really dark, and I expected it to be darker, and it wasn't. It was just normal for me. Like, everyone was saying it was really dark and to be prepared, and I was prepared too much, I think. I did really enjoy it. I thought the characters were really good, and I really loved that component, but maybe the plot didn't go where I was expecting it to. I'm still definitely really keen to pick up book 2 because I did really enjoy it, but it was different to what I was expecting, which is exciting, I guess. And finally, for an E in Transfiguration, which was not first in a series, I read The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin, which is the final book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I enjoyed the heck out of this. I was still kind of coming into my reading slump when I read this, and it was so good. It like was just amazing. It took me a while to get through, but I loved every minute. This follows a world where there are people who can kind of control the movement of the earth, I guess. That's kind of their magical ability. It's a very racially diverse, like most of the cast is people of color. It's queer diverse as well. And the world kind of goes through seasons, which are like apocalyptic events, and they happen kind of regularly. And this is like another season. They're called 5th seasons, like summer, autumn, winter, spring, and 5th season, the seasons. And yeah, I can't explain much of the plot of this 3rd book, but honestly just read this series. It's like an amazing, like, they all won Hugo Awards for a reason, and they're just honestly some of the best speculative fiction around out at the moment, and I'm really excited to read more from N.K. Jemisin. So those are all the books that I read in the month of August. I was really hoping to read a lot more, but it just didn't happen. So slumpy me will go over, and that's just what happens sometimes. We can't help these things. But thank you for watching. Comment down below if you've read any of these. I would love to chat about them. And I'm hoping I can kind of kick my slump for September a little bit, but I'm trying to be relaxed on myself. Tell me how you went on the NEWTs or any other readathons you're participating in the month of August. And otherwise, I'll see you next time with another video. Bye!